Today I'm going to read from Charles B. Heiser Jr.'s Seed to Civilization, The Story of Man's Food, published in 1973. I'm going to read from chapter 8, which is on the coconut, man's most useful tree, the coconut. No part of the coconut tree is wasted, Malayalam proverb. Although most people in the temperate zone are aware that palms are graceful, attractive trees of the tropics, probably few realize their great significance to man. In fact, many botanists consider the palm family, palmae, second only to the grass family in its importance to mankind, and in many parts of the tropics, palms are far more important than are the grasses. There are more than 2,000 species of palms, and a long list of useful ones could be given that would certainly include the coconut, the date palm, the African oil palm, the rattan palm, the wax palm, carnauba, the world's preferred wax, comes from a palm, and the sago palm, whose stem yields a starchy food used in Malaya and Indonesia. As a footnote on sago palm, a number of plants share the common name sago palm, including several different species of the palm family. Some plants, however, known by this name, are not members of the family. The date palm, Phoenix dactylifera, has been considered the tree of life in the subtropical deserts of the Old World and was a symbol of fecundity and fertility. Its fruit has long served nomadic Arabs as a staple food. In addition to its high sugar content, about 70%, the date contains about 2% protein, 2% fats, and is a fair source of some vitamins and minerals. It thus is a considerably better food than are some of the starch crops. Like most palms, the date palm has many other uses, 360 of them according to an ancient Persian source. Although the date palm is widely used, the coconut, Cocos nucifera, is rated as the world's most important palm, belonging on the list of man's dozen most important food plants. In addition to having been called man's most useful tree, the coconut has also been referred to as one of nature's greatest gifts to man and mankind's greatest provider in the tropics. Man uses practically all parts of the plant in one way or another, but it is the fruit, botanically classed as a drupe and not a nut, that gives the plant its great economic importance. The fruit is made up of a smooth outer layer, a fibrous middle layer, and a strong inner portion or shell that encloses the single seed. Frequently, coconuts appearing in markets in the United States have had the outer layers of the fruit removed so that the shell is exposed. The seed is made up of an outer layer, the meat or kernel, and the water, which together form the reserve food for the embryo. The coconut seed is one of the largest known. Coconuts, like bananas, need plenty of warmth and moisture and good drainage. They are mostly found near the coast, but do grow considerably inland in some regions. Florida is the farthest away from the equator where they are known to grow. Although now grown on plantations, they are still a crop on small holdings in many places. 90% of coconuts are grown in southeastern Asia. The Philippines are now the largest producer, and coconuts rank as the number one cash crop in that country. Indonesia, which until World War II held the first position, is now second in production, followed by Ceylon, Malaya, and Mexico. Coconut trees have been reported to bear 500 nuts a year, but 50 to 100 seems to be a more normal production. Harvesting is usually done by climbing the trees or by cutting the nuts with knives attached to long bamboo poles, or more rarely, the nuts are allowed to fall to the ground and are then collected. Monkeys reportedly have been trained to harvest coconuts in Sarawak, Indonesia, and Thailand. The name cocos itself relates to monkeys, but has nothing to do with their harvesting the fruit. The word, which comes from the Portuguese, means monkey's face, in reference to the three eyes in the shell that make it resemble the face of a monkey. After the nuts are harvested, they are cut in half and the meat gouged out immediately or after partial drying in the sun. The meat is then cured by sun drying where weather permits or in kilns to produce copra. The moisture content must be drastically reduced or the copra deteriorates rapidly. After drying, the oil, which forms 60 to 70% of the copra, is extracted. Primitive methods using stone or wooden mortars and pestles, powered by humans or bullocks, are still employed in parts of India, but have been replaced by hydraulic presses in most other coconut-producing areas. The oil is the most important commercial product derived from the coconut. Its greatest use in the last century was in the manufacture of soaps. All floating soaps were made from coconut oil until fairly recently, when it was found that soaps made from other oils would float if air was pumped through them during manufacture. Coconut oil is still regarded as one of the best for making soaps, and considerable amounts are still used for that purpose. In this century, however, its chief use has been for margarine, and it was the main oil used for that purpose until recently, when soybean and cottonseed oils have come largely to replace it. Since coconut oil is composed of 90% saturated fatty acids, its use is not as highly recommended for human food as the other vegetable oils, which are largely unsaturated. The residue or coconut cake left after oil extraction is used chiefly to feed livestock. The coconut cake is a rich source of both protein, one of the most nearly complete proteins of all vegetable sources, and carbohydrates. Although it is more fibrous than most other oilseed residues and hence difficult for man to digest, it is nevertheless unfortunate that more of it is not processed for human food, for coconuts are mostly grown in areas where protein deficiency is often pronounced. The meat from either immature or mature coconuts is, of course, used directly for human food in many areas where it is grown. Although it is the chief vegetable protein source for some people, it is usually served mixed with other food as a vegetable, and nowhere does it appear to be the basic food staple, as do most of the plants previously discussed. The per capita consumption is estimated to be 140 nuts a year in Ceylon, and is probably considerably greater than this among Polynesians in some of the Pacific Islands. In many countries of the temperate zones, dried coconut is used mostly for candies and cakes. Desiccated coconut meat was first made in England and the United States in the last part of the past century, and is a fairly important use of coconut meat today. The fibrous part of the fruit or husk, known as coir, also has a number of uses. It makes a fine rope, resistant to seawater, and its use for this purpose is quite ancient. Coir is also used to make mats, rugs, filters, and for stuffing furniture. India is the world's greatest producer. To prepare the fibers, the husks are immersed in saline backwaters for several months for retting, and the fibers are then separated by beating the husk with wooden mallets or clubs. The young inflorescence or flower cluster of the coconut, like that of several other palms, yields a sweet juice or toddy when tapped. The toddy, which is mostly sucrose, is drunk fresh or, more frequently, is used to prepare alcoholic beverages such as arak or vinegar. In Ceylon, more than 8 million gallons of arak are produced annually, very little of it being exported. Small amounts of toddy are also used for making sugar. The shells have a number of uses, the most ancient of which is for eating or drinking utensils and for fuel. They are still used for these purposes as well as for bowls, for hookah pipes, for the manufacture of novelties or artistic objects, and when ground are used as a filler in plastics. The coconut water makes a refreshing drink and in recent years has been used by plant physiologists as a growth-promoting substance. The large leaves, which reach lengths of 12 feet, are used for thatching and for making baskets and hats. The wood is used to some extent in construction and furniture making and forms some of the porcupine wood of commerce. The palm heart or cabbage, the tender bud at the apex of the stem, is sometimes eaten, but not as frequently as that of some other palms, for once the bud is removed, the tree dies. The coconut is also still used as a religious offering in some parts of southeastern Asia, probably stemming from the ancient belief that the coconut is the tree of heaven. Kalpa Vrishka in India, or the tree of life. There is also a belief among certain natives of New Guinea that the first coconut tree sprang from the head of the first man to die. Two main groups of coconut palms are recognized, dwarf forms and tall forms. Numerous varieties exist within each group, differing primarily in the shape, size, coloring, and yield of the fruit. Although seed selection for high yield probably is fairly ancient, there has been very little modern scientific breeding work on the coconut. There are several reasons for this. First of all, it is a tropical crop, and as we have already seen for other plants, these have received much less attention than the crops of the temperate zone, where more plant breeders and money for research are available. Moreover, the coconut is often a small landholder's crop rather than a plantation crop. As a rule, governments seldom do as much for the small farmers as they do for the big ones. Nor can small landholders employ breeders, as do some of the companies that have extensive holdings. Another factor responsible for the limited improvement of the coconut is that breeding work with a tree always takes longer than that with annual or herbaceous perennial plants. It takes 3 years for a dwarf coconut palm to bear fruit and 5 to 7 years for the tall varieties. From time of flowering to fruit, maturity is nearly a year. Germination of the seed requires about 4 months, time enough for a full growth cycle in some annual crops. Thus, the breeding of superior varieties of the coconut through hybridization requires many years of work. The place of origin of the coconut has been the subject of some controversy in the past. There were some who held that the coconut was a native of the New World, primarily because all of its close relatives are American. Others maintain that the coconut was native to the Indo-Pacific region, pointing out that it was a much more extensively used plant in this area than in the Americas. While it is true that the coconut does have most of its close relatives among the American palms, there is now general agreement among botanists that it originated in the Indo-Pacific region. Among some of the most convincing evidence that has been brought forward since the original controversy is fossil cocos of late tertiary age in New Zealand and India, proving that a species of coconut did inhabit the Pacific region before modern man appeared on the scene. The coconut was present in both Asia and the Americas previous to 1492. At that time, however, it was known only from western Panama in the Americas, and its wide distribution in the New World came in historical times. Its presence in Panama previous to the arrival of the Spanish can probably be explained without invoking man's aid, for coconuts are known to be able to float in seawater for more than 100 days, which would allow ample time for a fruit to float across the Pacific. Probably the establishment of coconuts in new areas through the agency of ocean currents is a rare event, but it would need to have happened only once to explain the plant's presence in the New World. Man, as well as ocean currents, is probably responsible for its wide distribution on the Pacific Islands. How early the coconut first became a domesticated plant is not known. It was in India by 1000 BC, but it may not have been first domesticated there. Two tales concerning coconuts, widely circulated and even found in some recent textbooks, were not put to test until recently. One is the story of the coconut crab or robber crab. According to the account given by Darwin, this crab tears the husk from the coconut fiber by fiber, exposing the three eyes on the shell, and then hammers on one of the eyes with its heavy claw until a hole is made, after which it extracts the coconut meat with its pincers. Apparently, Darwin's leg was being pulled by a Mr. Leach, whom he credits as his source, for recent studies have indicated that no one has ever seen a crab in nature perform this remarkable feat. And in feeding experiments, crabs have died when coconuts were the only food offered to them. The second story, concerning the finding of pearls inside of coconuts, also has never been substantiated. The so-called coconut pearls in museums have been shown to come from mollusks. End of chapter.